Chris. Well, Chris, why don't you just briefly introduce yourself and what your role is there at Adobe?
Sure. Hi, Kent. How are you? It's Chris Duffey. I'm on the strategic development team at Adobe. I've been here for about 5 years now, and I like to think of myself as the stethoscope. So at this intersection of product, industry, and creativity, and so I get to play in a pretty interesting intersection in terms of how to leverage technology to amplify creativity and ultimately enhance, enrich our lives and build greater experiences.
Okay, well, I think maybe a good place to start is some of the different tools that are out there, and maybe let's start with like Photoshop because I know there was stuff with that were 3D elements within Photoshop, but then there was actually kind of a taking some of those elements out, and so maybe talk about how there's been different aspects of 3D that maybe been already introduced to some of the different products, but then where things are at now and where the focus is going to be headed in the future for kind of the pipeline for Adobe.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe one great place to start is our North Star is building great experiences. At the end of the day, that's where our products and our attention really lies. And I think it's quite exciting with this evolution of great experiences to spatial designing spatial experiences. As we all know, preaching to the choir, 3D is a fundamental pillar of creating great spatial experiences. So yeah, we've been on this journey, and there's a spectrum of tools. Adobe had some early 3D capabilities, and I think we saw the kind of read the tea leaves and saw where things were going. And recently we acquired Substance, which is a new offering that really I think we're quite excited about in terms of the ability to democratize the creation and distribution of 3D assets and environments, experiences, and the distribution of those 3D assets and experiences. So Substance, we just launched a new Substance 3D collection, which is quite exciting. It has about five, I would say, multiverses within Substance. The first one is Stager, and Stager allows you to build these environments. To your point about Photoshop, it is an environment where you can bring in 3D assets, and with AI, it understands the lighting and symmetry and composition, and it allows you to create some really interesting things. The second kind of component or world within Substance within the collection is Sampler, and that's where you can take materials and really texturize a number of things very seamlessly. Designer is a code-based approach to that, where if you really want to just go in and code from scratch, you can do that. Painter, again, is kind of the 3D environment for painting, texturizing different materials. And then Modeler is quite exciting, still very early on. And that's where you have this digital clay canvas where you can actually create not only 3D environments, but you can create in a 3D environment.
So it sounds like there's been a real consolidation with Substance, with the Stager, Painter, Sampler, Designer. There's also the Substance 3D Modeler, which is actually Oculus Medium, which is the actual 3D modeling. Because as we look at the 3D pipeline, you have to actually create the 3D model before, a lot of what Substance is known for is the Substance Painter to be able to paint on textures. Maybe you could talk about the modeler because that's been in beta. I don't know if that's going to be coming out soon, and how you see that might be helping to fill out the 3D modeling production pipeline, especially because that's a VR native way with Oculus Medium you to actually be immersed within VR, be able to create some 3D models. And so maybe you talk about that acquisition of Oculus Medium and where you see that going in terms of the Substance 3D modeler.
Yeah, definitely. As you kind of bring that up, it reminds me of what a inflection point this really is for creativity, and communication as a whole. I don't think I wasn't around when this happened, but I think the last major invention like this was back when words or symbols went from pictures to sounds, and I think we're at a same inflection point with 3D, the spatial web, and creating this metaverse, or starting to create the metaverse. And one part of that, speaking of meta, is this ability to create these 3D worlds in 3D. So quite excited about that. We're almost going into this era of Pollock, where you have these multi-sensory outputs from artists, which I think is really ushering in this golden age of creativity. So essentially, we've created the platform, as we talked about, of all those different components. Right now, the modeler is still in beta, and ultimately, that can get synced into like a Project Arrow if you want to bring it into an AR experience as well. So we're hard at work at building all the capabilities for an end-to-end content creation, everything from creating, sampling textures and materials, to bring it into a 2D environment on your screen, or into this 3D environment with a modeler.
I know when we had a little pre-chat, we were talking a little about the input and export formats, and in particular, I think what's interesting for the WebXR community is that GLTF has been one of the standards from the Kronos group that I think is trying to be pushed forward as kind of like the JPEG of 3D. So to have GLTF be as a model to be able to import but also export. So maybe you could talk a bit about the support for things like GLTF for some of these different programs, and what you see as kind of like Adobe's philosophy for
Yeah.
these interchange formats, like with like GLTF.
Yeah, and Kent, maybe a little referencing our pre-chat, you brought up your episode 1000 over the weekend. I listened to it and have to just encourage the audience here. It's a phenomenal documentary, for lack of a better word. It is really a historic overview of where VR has been and where the metaverse is going. It's phenomenally done. And I think, we one of my takeaways from that episode was, I think we're one additive or extension of that conversation you had with a number of folks, is we're also quite excited about what happens when attentive AI gets infused into the metaverse. So when it's predictive, intuitive of this 3D environment where the metaverse understands you, your needs, it has empathy towards you, and it can be suggestive and predictive and attentive to how you're creating, but also for the consumer on how they're consuming it. So to that point, and to your question, we're quite excited about where things are going. We have our own native formats, but of course, as things are so much emerging, we also have an extensibility approach, where we allow for and we encourage the support of open standards and different extensions. So we're very mindful of being part of that kind of open XR community, and being supportive in every way possible.
Yeah, as you mentioned some of the AI, I know some of the features that I've seen, at least some of the trends, is the blending in of AI to do like creative assistance for different
Yeah.
things. And I don't know if there's been any augmented reality stuff. I don't know if that's where you start to get into Arrow. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Arrow. That's not ARROW, which is what I thought it was, but it's AERO, Arrow, which is kind of like your augmented reality interface. So how do you publish things from Arrow, and where does that go? I mean, is it something that's then put into like iOS or Android app, or can you publish it to like WebXR on the web? What's sort of the output for Arrow? Oh, you're back now. I don't know if I froze, but I was just asking about the output for Arrow.
Yeah, right. So it's still it's in beta, and there's this. We've been talking about this in the web for many years. How this need for personalization, And so, we take a similar approach um, with our tools for the content creators as well, this ability to create a personalized experience for the creators themselves. And so it is open to the ability to customize the output as this kind of ecosystem is expanding. And so plugins, SDKs, APIs are allowed to patch into sync with Arrow in terms of the different types of output. And as we all know, it's a really, I think, exciting times in terms of the hardware meeting up with not only the software but also the marketplace use cases. So I think we're trying to take that approach where we're flexible and adaptive enough for where things go. I know we know it's going somewhere, and we want to be part of this movement. So we're trying to have this modular, flexible approach going forward.
Well, I think a lot of folks who are involved with WebXR, they may be creating native experiences using WebXR, but they also may be producing 360 videos. And I know that Adobe Premiere has a lot of ability to be able to author 360 videos, export the proper equi-rectangular format that can then be uploaded to, say, YouTube or Facebook, or eventually WebXR as well. But there's also Adobe After Effects that could also potentially export with these equi-rectangular formats. And also, when I was doing the ambisonics to be able to create spatial audio, I actually ended up having to use something like Reaper rather than Adobe Audition, just because the support for ambisonic audio wasn't as robust as, say, some of the other DAWs that are out there right now. So I'm just curious if you could maybe say a few words about 360 video and how you see what's happening now already with Adobe Premiere, After Effects, as well as kind of the more spatial audio side for Adobe Audition, and the support that you hope to have there in terms of integrating all these different aspects of producing and authoring 360 video.
Yeah, I think the common theme across everything is platform first approach, and we try to build out the ecosystem to support the creative community and all the distribution channels. One kind of new addition to the family is Frame.io, which is a recent acquisition. And so that's going to, I think, really facilitate something that we've seen over the last 18 months or so, this ability to collaborate from different places. As the future of work is evolving, we've seen that you don't have to just all be in one place. And I think Frame.io is another indication of how technology can support the ability to amplify human creativity and workflows. So Frame.io allows you a video workflow from different locations. And, I think that's going to just really accelerate the different aspects and importance of 360 video and so on. So quite exciting, as that gets absorbed, integrated into Creative Cloud as well, Frame.io.
Yeah, that was a browser-based platform. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and so that's we chatted in a interesting position where we're about a week or so out from Adobe Max, and we've got a number of really exciting announcements that we'll be talking to about that. So don't want to do any spoiler alerts here, but check it out. There'll be some good things announced.
Yeah, tune in for anybody interested in browser stuff. I mean, we're talking about WebXR, so I think there's going to be some stuff that we can't necessarily dig into that I think folks should check out at the Adobe Max coming up here. But there is, like, say, Dreamweaver is something that is another Adobe product that has in the past been a part of authoring at least the 2D web. Is there anything that is happening with WebXR with, say, Dreamweaver to be able to start to look at some of these other programs that are out there, say A-Frame and other ways that are some of these frameworks that are helping to produce code that's meant to be on the web. There's 3GS and Babylon JS. There's lots of other JavaScript based aspects of the underlying the heart of what's driving the WebGL. So what can you say in terms of Dreamweaver and what kind of things are going on with Dreamweaver, WebGL, and WebXR in general?
Yeah, a number of great points, topics there. I'll use XD, Adobe XD, which is our experience design tool, as a metaphor for this topic or this point of discussion. And we have passionate debate and discourse on this in terms of the automation of code. And so our current stance is right now, leave the craft of designing experiences to the designers, the UX folks, but then leave the craft also to the coders and developers as well. We can, to your earlier point about AI being a creative assistant, we can offer snippets of code here and there as a starting point. But what we continuously hear is that the development community, that is a craft, that is this great dance of art and science, and so we're not currently focused on totally automating code from design. That's not to say it won't change, but currently that's kind of our thinking. The big focus is, I think, getting that the foundation of democratizing 3D in place, and then the ability to amplify it through collaboration across different teams from different locations. So I think that's a big current focus right now.
Okay, and I'll start to be taking some questions. And so, if you do type into either Twitch or YouTube, that's coming up on the restream here, and I'll be diving into some of those. But before we dive into some of the audience questions, one of the other questions that I had is just in terms of, one of the biggest players in terms of 3D creation is either Blender or Maya to be able to actually generate 3D content. There's also Cinema 4D to be able to sort of lay out stuff. And so there's a number of other, authoring programs that are out there. So does Adobe want to try to make a play for either creating something new or acquiring, or in terms of 3D production pipeline, there's nothing to kind of start for something that's the equivalent of, say, a Blender or a Maya. So yeah, just if there's any current plans or how you think about that aspect of more 2D creation of 3D assets. Oculus Medium and now to be Substance Modeler is more VR native, but that's
Yeah.
different than, say, a whole set of the established 2D programs that have been a part of creating 3D assets.
Yeah, we want to be. I think our current approach strategy is to be an enabler of the broader ecosystem. So Substance easily plugs into all of those 3D content tools, creation tools. If you take a broader look historically at Adobe, the products that have done extremely well are the ones that have found this sweet spot in terms of offering professional grade capabilities, but they're not too niche. And so I think we're taking a similar approach with 3D content creation and our broader tool set. We talk a lot about creativity for all. So we want these robust tools, but we want them to not feel too heavy for anyone to be alarmed to come into the Creative Cloud ecosystem. So that's kind of our current approach. So I think Substance is a nice happy medium in terms of offering the ability to create 3D content at speed of thought, but also being able to kind of plug into these kind of, I'd say, more in-depth tools when and where needed.
Okay, well, we have a question from Lossless, and we touched on this briefly, talking about the export formats from some of these different programs. And there's a specific question if there's any interest at Adobe for Aero to support WebXR in order to build and share AR experiences over the web.
Absolutely. I think you know any any output that is of use to the creative community, we fully support. So again, back to that extensibility, we've got some core outputs, but then with our extensibility approach, that's where you can plug in different APIs for different outputs. And so,
Um,
one example is over to Adobe XD. Last time I checked, and I always get my hand slapped for putting out a number, but in terms of different plugins, I think we're hovering around 250, and I'm sure Substance will get to that level in terms of plugins as well.
Great. And it's a question for Shaggy Mummy. Why is Substance not a part of Adobe Creative Cloud?
Yeah, maybe it's a bit of semantics in terms of is it or is it not. It's a standalone offering that we recently released this summer called the Adobe Substance Collection. But we very much see it part of the Creative Cloud internally, and hopefully after this discussion, you see it as well. From a technical standpoint, it has different abilities. So it does have standalone licensing component to it as well.
Yeah, I know there's a number of different packages that you get that have
Yeah.
different collections, and so maybe the underlying part of that question is maybe there's specific things to combine it with that that's also referencing. Another question from Trevor Flowers is how do Adobe teams approach differences in design for AR and design for AR, or design for VR and design for AR?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One thing that is a common thread is the importance of design systems. And so our internal design team are big proponents of using design systems, but we also think of ourselves as customer zero. So we use our tools to create our tools. And so I don't think I think there's more commonalities between VR and AR than differences in terms of methodologies and approaches and use cases. So I think we see it as both are a means to a greater end in terms of, again, back to our North Star of creating great experiences, whether it be through VR or AR. So I think, that's really for the creative storytellers, the audience here to determine how they see best fit to, tell their stories.
And I see Julie, which means that we're going to be wrapping up here and moving
We
on to
still
our
have a
next
few minutes. It's
next
okay. I
thing.
just wanted to jump in and field some of the questions that were in the chat, and also just talk about that collaboration piece of how things have changed in behind the scenes for Adobe. Going from this 2D world into an immersive one, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the back end of Adobe and how your teams changed. Obviously, you had to scale out departments or different roles that people were doing to help support all of these different perspectives. I think that's going to be a key word today. Kent is perspective.
Yeah, collaboration is a major pillar of how we're unifying the Creative Cloud with Substance included in Creative Cloud. And that really is Adobe's superpower, is that interoperability of all the different tools. So, there's different examples. One that comes to mind is XD's co-editing in this age of like Google Doc co-editing or Microsoft or Google Slides. We now have this capability of multiplayer design in the documents. And that's only going to get amplified in the 3D world, this multiplayer creation opportunity. There's so many parallels of the outputs, but also we're now, it's kind of that phrase, Kent, in your episode that stuck out was, sometimes art imitates life and life imitates art. I think also sometimes, the content creators imitate the consumer, and the consumer sometimes imitates the content creator. And what I mean by that is we now see this environment of gaming, right? Multiplayer gaming, so big right now, and so we're taking inspiration from that, and it's really exciting to see what multi-designer outputs look like. So collaboration is going to continue to be a major focus, and then of course there's big technical kind of challenges to make that happen, browser-based approach. So we'll be hearing more about that at Max as a little teaser.
Yeah, I wanted to just follow on quickly on, as we're talking about the episode 1000 of Voices of VR podcast, there was a lot of just visions about where things are going. And there's been a lot of talk just generally about the metaverse and what that means. And just curious if Adobe has any sort of like approach that they've been taking in terms of their role in this kind of shift from 2D to 3D, this shift into spatial computing, or this broader, larger shift into the metaverse, which you have Unreal Engine and Unity, but we also have WebXR that's coming up. That's going to be a part of this interoperable immersive worlds. And so, how does Adobe start to think about the metaverse and their role and how that evolves?
Yeah, definitely. I think all are somewhat suitcase words in the terms of there's multiple definitions, but I think we see WebXR as a bridge to the metaverse. And so all of this is exciting for us in terms of anything that allows greater expression of human creativity is just, makes our heart smiles, music to our ears. So, I think substance is a good indication of where we're placing our future bets. And then underlying all of that is, how AI is going to be this attentive assistant in terms of being able to create at the speed of thought. And again, all mapping to kind of experience design or spatial experience design.
Great. And the final two questions, and we have to wrap up here, is any plans to revive Mixamo? And is there going to be like a VR version of Substance Painter?
VR of Substance Painter. Ooh, I love that. I'll take that. I'll take that back to the team. I think Modeler has some capabilities of that, and that's only going to greatly evolve. But I like that. Yeah, where that's headed.
And any updates on Mixamo? There's a question about that it needs to be revived. If it's been there, if it's gonna have more effort towards Mixamo.
Yeah, I don't know how much I can say about that publicly at this point.
Okay. Well, Chris, I think that's a really great overview of a lot of what's happening at Adobe. And yeah, thanks for joining us today to give us a little overview of the shift from 2D to 3D and kind of moving into how the Substance Painter is going to be a big part, but also the WebXR is going to be a part as well as we continue to hear more aspects of some different potential other browser-based announcements coming up next week at the Adobe Max. So thanks for joining.